So hi, everybody that's joining us. We have a few more that are still expected to come, but we'll start at 11:05 because we want to give Chase sufficient time to present his material and then also share with you some public announcements. So first of all, for those that were here on time today, we're very grateful for you and we're going to make it worth your time. So again, thank you.
All right, so about 30 seconds to get started. Now they're coming in now. Nice. All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is just about noon. We have a really special program for you today. And it's STR forecasting, hospitality performance overview, not only on the US, but also California and in the Los Angeles, various submarkets of Los Angeles. My name is Mitch Woolley. I'm president of HSMAI in Los Angeles, also director of operations at eMarketing Associates. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to recognize our HSMAI Los Angeles chapter board of directors, Samantha Rodriguez, who is our immediate past president, Libby Zarahi, who is our VP of Programs and Education, Jennifer Pachedli, who is our VP of Membership, David Barnett, VP of Finance, Craig Carbonaire, VP of Social Media, Lavon Miner, VP of Sponsorships, Jody Flowers, who is our VP of Student Affairs and COVID Recovery, and now last but not least, Sandra Martinez, who is our Managing Director. Welcome, everyone. Today's moderator / MC is Libby Zarahi, who's the Director of Sales and Marketing at Hotel Amarano. And it gives me great pleasure to turn it over to you, Libby. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see people that I know and even greater to see people that I don't know, because this is a wonderful opportunity for us to connect. For myself, if you don't know me, please connect with me through LinkedIn. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better and be of assistance to you. Mitch just introduced the board, but one thing I'd like to reiterate is we truly are facilitators for you, the chapter. So if there's subject matter or something that you would like to have us research and present, just like Chase is doing today, we encourage you to communicate with us or through Sandra, who is basically the rodeo master for all of us. Today's webinar is STR Forecasting. It's a hospitality performance overview. And like myself, I'm sure a lot of you have already turned in your business plans. You have perhaps not presented to your owners. However, I think what Chase brings to the table today is very current and factual information. So for example, when I recorded my last information, it was as of August. And what he's going to share with us today are updates and overarching information, which I certainly am going to have in my back pocket when I go to present to my owners on December 2nd. So once again, Chase, thank you for being here with us today. Just a reminder on the actual meeting when Chase is presenting is if you would take time to mute your audio unless you're speaking, it really helps with a clear sound for all. And you want to mute any background noise. So put the dogs out, try and keep things as quiet as possible, although we know and respect many of you are working from home. And then if you have questions, the way we prefer to organize is through the chat box. But if there's something pressing there that you feel you should ask because Chase is addressing something, please unmute and ask the question and we'll do our best to answer it. Just a moment to remind all of us that HSMAI provides us many resources for ongoing career development and education. So what we have up on the screen today are the certifications that are currently available. The CRME, the Certified Hospitality Revenue Management Executive, the Certified Hospitality Digital Marketer. I'm currently studying for my CHBA, my Certified in Hospitality Business Acumen. And finally, very challenging, the Certified Revenue Manager and Analyst. Would love to get that one. I'm not quite there yet. But to get more information on these certification programs, these are self-study computer-based programs that you test for when the timing's right, can be researched and obtain your enrollment through hsmai.org, and that will take you into the certification programs. So I encourage everybody to at least visit, and perhaps you can project at least one for the end of this year or 2022. Thank you. We also have a series of there's a series of educational events that are taking place. The first one is the Hotel Digital Sales Essential. That will be from November 2nd to December 6th. And the benefits of the takeaway is to apply digital marketing knowledge to grow revenue, solve digital marketing opportunities for hotel properties and partners, make better decisions around marketing channels, and be able to speak to your ROI. And then talk in a poised manner about communicating strategies more credibly to owners, vendors, and other team members. And we all know that digital marketing is not going away. So to be more proficient at it just helps all of us. This is a program that I'm enrolled in now, and I will just share with you that all the text materials, once you enroll, are sent to you. Then you have the Marketing Essentials, which is different than Sales Essentials. That's November 2nd through December 6th. And it's basically the same conceptual learning, applying digital marketing knowledge to grow revenue, and then solving your opportunities through case studies, making better decisions around the variety of digital that you can do. There's so much out there, yet our wallets are so contained. So this can help you be more poised to make those decisions. And then, this is probably the most fun part of the morning, is to be able to welcome new members. We thank you so much for investing your time today and through the chapter overall. We'd like to welcome Lisa Arias, who I know very well, and very well respected lady who has, I believe, just opened the Shea Hotel in Culver City. So when we all get a chance to go and admire that product, please do so. Also, Kelly Marbury, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, Kelly, but I apologize if I didn't. She's Regional Director of Revenue Management for IHG, a very well-respected brand. Then we have Mark McBride, Senior Director of Revenue Management for Hilton Hotels Corporation. Again, another well-respected brand that we're so happy that you would join us. Terry Honorado is alumni, very well known throughout the city. She's the Director of Sales and Marketing at the Los Angeles Athletic Club. Mitch is going to comment about an event that we're having next Thursday at her property. And I'm going to try and get a few friends to go. We'll learn a little bit more about that at the end. But I have to tell you, if you have not been in the athletic club, even in the last 2 years, you must go. It is fabulous. It is fabulous. And not a better host than Terry. So thank you for that as well. And finally, we have, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Giovanni Salvino Parada. And he's VP of Marketing of Experience Restaurant Group. Fabulous name. I love it. I can't wait to learn more about that. But again, welcome to our new members. Now I get to take just 1 second to introduce you to Chase, who is the Regional Sales Manager for STR, leading his sales team in the Western region of North America. Chase and his team are responsible for growing STR's network and then also strengthening the overall data set in which we all work with. So without further ado, Chase, thank you so much for preparing for today. You've been a great pleasure to collaborate with, and we can't wait to see what you have to present to us today. Thank you. So we'll turn it over to Chase now.
All right, thanks so much, Libby. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to have a chance to work with HSMAI and see a lot of familiar faces out there, or names, I guess, as I see it. So a lot of you all have been in different presentations that I've even done. And so what we'll do, just like before, is we'll cover a lot of information in a short period of time. We'll provide some context around some of the data that we're seeing. But I just want to make it known that we will make this presentation deck available to all that attended, and then therefore you can forward it on to others if you would like. So what you're going to see today is the what we call, fresh off the press, the newest monthly data. So I was happy that the dates were moved somewhat so that I didn't have to sit up here, and not sit up here, I guess I'm at home, sit here and talk about August data in the end of October. So good news for me, hopefully you all as well. So what we're going to do is I just like to sort of zoom out, and we'll talk about the total US, especially with the newest data coming out. We'll move into the classes and the total US. As Mitch said, we'll talk about California. We'll just kind of work our way down to Los Angeles, the market, And then we'll look more specifically at the submarkets that make up the LA market. And then obviously we'll end with pipeline and forecast. And then hopefully I will allow time at the end for QA, which sometimes I don't know if I strategically try to make it last longer, so QA doesn't happen. So I get stumped a lot.
Chase,
So let's go ahead and start. Sure.
Chase,
Yes,
would you mind putting it in full screen mode?
Oh yeah, I thought I did that. My apologies. Oh, hold on one second. No, hold on. Let me reshare because it's saying it's stopped. It's paused. Let's see. Okay, how are we looking now? Is it the full screen or is it still the presentation?
We can still see the presentation because we can see the next slide in a.
Yeah, it's weird. It
small
keeps
window.
swapping over. Let's see. Let's do this. Okay, now is it still paused?
Still two.
How about now?
Hey, folks, could you, if you're not Chase, could you put yourself on mute, please? We're getting background noise. Thank you.
Who did it? Oh, I've got it. I found it.
Mitch, how are we looking? For some reason, I'm getting something I haven't seen before where it's saying your screen sharing is paused. And when I stop sharing, then it sort of reverts back to, hold on, let me try this again.
It was the second to the top left icon. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. All right. What would it be if we weren't, there weren't a few hiccups in the virtual platform here, right? Okay. So where were we? Talking about the total US. Let me try to regroup here. So this was the much sort of dreaded, if you will, conference season. And really the verdict is not bad. And in fact, if we had to give the industry a grade as far as total US goes, we would say an A is about right. And you'll see here on the left are the actual data points as you look at room supply. And I want to point out the TRI, we're going to look at total room inventory. So that takes into account all properties, even if they're temporarily closed. And then as you move down, you see occupancy, that's standard, which is, that does take into account some closed property. So we as an STR had to, you may have heard this before, had to change our methodology during COVID to a total room inventory and a standard, because we always reported out on standard, but with so many temporary rooms that were properties that were closed, we really had to go in and adjust that. And something else that we're doing differently is obviously, and you've seen it, I'm sure, but we're starting to index against 2019. Yes, we'll look at some 2020 numbers just to see, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to, I would sure you all would agree, you all lived it, to benchmark against 2020 as much as it is to index against 2019, which I'm sure you've also heard was arguably the best performance year in hospitality. Well, since we've been reporting out, and we would stand by that. So a lot of good news here. You know, I think something else that we've started to look at is looking at, you know, the inflation and how to the actual numbers versus the index kind of turn out. And really, again, as you look at occupancy, and you have to remember that this is the height of the conference season, and that's one thing that you'll hear about more today. Is, and you've also heard and you've seen in your properties, is that leisure has really been what's driving any sort of demand. Well, in fact, the groups are starting to come back. And so we'll touch on that, but we were pleasantly surprised to see these numbers be, you know, as strong as they were, especially if you look at occupancy is at almost 62%. But if you index that against 2019, I mean, it's near 100, I mean, 92, but still that's a really strong index. I think one of the things as far as the revenue, the RevPAR goes, it's now, you know, about less than 10% from where we were in 2019 levels. And if you take into account of all that you've heard, or maybe heard from us, or that we've written, what's said of what was going to be of this month, I think we should all be pretty happy with kind of how the results planned out. So this is just taking, the two slides that we just looked at and combining. So you're looking at the nominal and then the real, which is the inflation, and just seeing how those compare out. And then this is looking at a 12-month moving average. So again, taking that annualized data points, and you can see still, if you look at the index, the occupancy, even with taking in those really bad months, and then taking in what have really been strong months, you see that occupancy is still over 50%, so more than half the rooms are being sold, and ADR is still over 100. Again, if you look at RevPAR, you take that, right at 50% occupancy, that's why you see that RevPAR number a little bit lower. But again, it's still indexed against, 72% against 2019, which again, considering you take in the last 12 months, I would say that too would be a win. So again, we talked about RevPAR only being about 10% off of where it was. It's about 70% was the year-over-year change. So from 2020 to 2021, very strong numbers. Obviously, we saw that number way up high there and peaked at over 250% change year over year, which is also why we index against 2019, just to kind of see where the industry sits. And if we take that a little bit further, if we take the total RevPAR and we index against the same month, last in 2019, you can see that the 2021 is 215%, which is around the 2015 levels. So very, very strong as far as look at where it was the largest decline in RevPAR percent change, that almost was below 80%, and then to see how that number has rocketed back up. So if you index it against 2015, that would be a 215% change. So very, very strong still, even with some mixed numbers with group and transit. So this is going to look at total U.S. occupancy. And again, it's just looking at April 20 and looking at a long-term run, if you will, from left to right. Obviously, some seasonality kicks in, when you're looking at the total U.S. But again, we knew, coming from July and August, especially the end of August and sort of the first part of September, there would be a bit of a drop off. But again, not as much as we had anticipated, with schools back in full swing. Again, that number seems to be very strong. And a lot of that has to account to, if we look at groups, and not all groups have canceled. I think we sort of were in the mode of nobody's traveling. And then we looked and said, well, we're traveling and having events. Now, the events aren't the size that they have been in the past, but the good news is that events are happening. And so some positive news from September is that, as you can see at the top there, demand index reaches the second highest level this year. And we'll look at this even closer when we look at LA, the market, but some positive news coming out of there, the group, as we segment out transit and group. And then just to finish up here with the total US before we move into class, obviously see the rate recovery decelerates as groups slowly return. We know that transit leisure really sort of yields a higher ADR than group. So if you sort of pack that all in, you'll see here still ahead of 2019 in September. So very, very happy about what we're seeing from a performance standpoint. As we move into class, what we've done here is we've broken out, as you know, we have, the 6 classes from full service to limited service to economy from left to right. No secret that, the mid-scale economy, that limited service class really is what drove any sort of performance in 2020. So if we went and looked at 2019, which we have here in the sort of the lighter green, you can see there how, in 2019, the full service, the luxury class, the upscale really outperformed all other classes. And then we sort of saw the flip, where the mid-scale economy and even some upper mid-scale really out, and the far left categories there. A lot of that had to do with, being in a lot of those luxuries, being in the central business districts. A lot of them were forced to be closed. I know LA dealt a lot with the COVID restrictions and just could not operate. So a lot of that was an inventory number, but you can see as things are starting to, to come back, it's not as far off as it was as you look at the far right in the green. So starting to see some signs of normality, if you will. I think really the limited service economy still mostly normal. I think the full service still, as you can see here, is trailing. And as you look at ADR, you can certainly see here, again, looking at the same sort of concept of far left being 2019 in the light blue, and then 2021 being on the right in the darker blue. ADR is kind of outpacing on the far left there. So it's kind of a swap. But I would say that the upper up, being that they still have a ways to go, being that they're so heavily on conferences, but with September demand, as we saw, is sort of a relief to hoteliers because the conference season is sort of the bread and butter of that group. So to see demand more than 3/4 of the way back to where it was in 2019 levels and a month-over-month improvement in the index is a really huge accomplishment. You can sort of see that in the RevPAR. Again, the left, the lighter, is that, like we said before, that total rooms inventory, and then the right being the standard. And this would be indexed against 2019. So obviously, like we had said, that mid-scale economy ahead of where RevPAR was in 2019. Upper mid-scale very, very close, but as you can, we talked about the upper upscale still have a ways to go. And then luxury, as we'll talk about in LA and the submarkets, it's a niche, and you all know that who operate luxury. I know the Shea opening up in what we would call that has opened in the LA airport submarket. I would love to have a chance to stay there and see what that's all about. And that's a niche product. So a lot of those people continue to stay in those luxury type properties. So now we're just going to take a really, some of the same approach in California. I won't spend as much time just because I want to spend a lot more of that on drilling down to more of Los Angeles and the submarkets. But, let's give you a brief overview here. I think some highlights, again, RevPAR exceeds the $100 mark. Last year at this time, it was at $70. So that's a big jump, as you can see, more than 50%. Anytime RevPAR can jump more than 50% is really great. The occupancy from a realized number, it's a little bit higher than the U.S., but not far off, maybe 4 percentage points. So again, very, very strong numbers coming out of California, considering what we had thought the tail end of September would really be a different story. So here we're going to do is break out the classes. And we're going to look at, this is the state of California. Again, we'll look at total 2021 to the far left is a swath a little bit, where 2021 is in the dark green. Again, 2019 is in light green. So same colors, just a little bit easier to read, I think, from left to right. And you can see here the Lux and upper up classes well above 50% in occupancy in September. And given where they were, close to, sub 40, that's a huge improvement, especially considering where they were in 2019. Again, so the same where we were with the total US is that mid-scale economy, that limited service continues to be very, very strong. And again, a little bit below where they were in 2019 from an occupancy standpoint, but strong numbers nonetheless. As you move into the ADR, there's only 2 classes that are below the 2019 ADR in the month of September. And obviously, as you look at those numbers, you can say upper up class and then upscale class, right? So back to that same concept where we were in the total US. And then with the luxury is well above the ADR in 2021 from where it was in 2019. And the last slide here for California, again, was just a brief overview, is to look at, even with the strong ADR, there's all but one classes are still below the 2019 RevPAR numbers. So that occupancy is still dragging down. We even looked at, there wasn't one class in California that was above 2019 occupancy numbers. So though we have really strong ADR, the occupancy is still sort of, that demand, which drives RevPAR, is really sort of still bringing it down, but not bad numbers here, not at all, especially from where we were. There are some classes that are right there on the edge, especially if you look at economy and you look at mid-scale and those things. So I would again take time to review this as you like, because we will make this available. I just wanted to hit on California really quickly before we moved into more of the LA and then the submarkets. So as we look at the Los Angeles, this is the market. One thing that we're looking at is the leisure travel, and the sort of the leisure really pushed occupancy to its highest pre-pandemic, in July, to 76% occupancy, which is extremely strong number. You can see now that sort of back to that 65% as, again, schools start. Groups haven't come back as strong, though we'll see that they're not as bad as we anticipated. But again, considering the Delta variant surges that have taken place since June, there's been, that's caused a lot of issues for group recovery, as we know. But again, if you look at these numbers across the board, and this is not indexed against 2019, this is just looking at a basic, percent change. So very strong numbers in September. So as you look again from the class standpoint, from a left to right view, I think to sort of touch a little bit more on the transit and looking at, again, the class view and how that sort of breaks down. LA, the market, still has the highest occupancy among all of our top 25 markets. And in fact, from June to September, its occupancy has been about 80% or higher on the weekends. So, and again, if you look at sort of the weekday, the weekend rates are about $30 higher than the weekends. And again, we'll look at ADR, but just kind of wanted to point out some things there. So in a sense, the way you could look at this is to say that the reduction in group has in fact helped increase the ADR for the market, especially with those very high ADR numbers. But again, luxury class just below 60% among all classes in the market there. This looks at room demand, like we had just talked about. And you can see here, I'll tell you, this is broken down in segmentation, but if you look at, take into account the groups, this was the highest level since February 2020, but still about half of where it was in September. Again, with the restrictions, there's just not a lot going on, and you all probably know more than I do, that have been, sort of placed on, for instance, LA and Long Beach convention centers, that if you take into account that's going on, you still see this is real time. So this is the newest weekly data that was sent out from a demand standpoint, and it was at in the 552,000 plus in demand by week. So the leisure is still spilling over. I think you've heard the term, maybe you have not, but leisure, I don't know how I feel about it, but sort of the blend of, where you can work and play if you like, having the ability to still be remote and work from home, and you can work in many different areas. So we believe that is also helping these numbers quite a bit. And then not to take, also take into account, there's been newer properties open, and so take all those factors into place, and you start to see, again, these very strong numbers, which I was really surprised to see in October, where, we really thought the bottom was going to drop out, right? I think everybody sort of maybe didn't think, didn't want to admit it, or maybe it wasn't going to be as good as we thought. But, this, I think, has exceeded, especially in LA, in LA, the market, how impressive this really is. And we talked about the ADR again. When we talk about difference between weekend, weekdays, this takes account into all 7 days. And it's breaking out the different classes again from left to right. So you see here the notes at the top, the upper upscale classes are the only classes that are below the 2019, but they are very close. So again, if you think about just like the US and just like California, and then you drill down to, looking at the market here in LA, that those are the hardest hit classes, if you will, out of the 6. And they're very close to being back to where they were in ADR. And I think if you look back in time and look at different, I know COVID has been like nothing we've ever seen before. The Black Swan, whatever title you want to name it, but a lot of the other disruptions or the recessions, they've all been different too. One of the things that you all may know this, but just to point out of how impressive these ADR numbers are, is that typically ADR has been lagging, right, on the recovery. But in this case, everyone's really stayed very strong on rates and really pushed rates. And you can see that holds true here. And as we drill down more into the sub-markets of what makes up the LA market, you'll see that holds true as well. And lastly, with the RevPAR, and the increase in ADR helps the luxury have the biggest jump among all the classes in RevPAR. I think that's, you can look at there on the far left, going from $126 RevPAR to $244. We saw where the rates were. We saw where occupancy was. Obviously, the rates in luxury classes have really across the board have been very strong. Again, going back to occupancy isn't as bad as sort of that, upper upscale or that limited service that really rely heavily, especially upper upscale, so heavily on the conferences, where luxury is more that, again, that niche product, where we're seeing that RevPAR, very strong numbers coming out of that class. And that holds true here, even in LA. There's a lot going on in this area. Things are opening up still. The hotels are open. There's new hotels coming on board. And I look forward to seeing how LA, the market, as we transition into the submarkets, but how LA, the market does, being the host of the Super Bowl in 2022. So interesting to see, I guess, when hopefully I'm invited back, we can really see how those numbers, when that time comes, how those numbers compare and benchmark against 2021. If we want to feel really good, we can look at 2020. So we're going to do things a little bit different here. So we're going to look at the same KPIs that we track. And for those of you, hopefully I should have pointed this out, but the performance data that you see comes directly from the hoteliers. A lot of those partners are on the call today. This is not scraped. This is directly from the source. And we do track occupancy. We do track, your average daily rate, so that hoteliers provide us with number of rooms sold, how much revenue they collected. We already have their total supply, so we're able to break that out and look at that occupancy, average daily rate, revenue per available room. I really should have mentioned that in the beginning. Sorry about that, but just to provide context, I would assume most of the group knows that. But if you have any questions about how that works, or you want to participate, please let me know, because that's how we're able to share this with the industry, is from our partners, the hotels. So these are going to be some small numbers, and don't worry, I'm going to help point out what's going on here. And also just know that we'll make this available. So as we look at, these are the many submarkets that make up LA, the market. We talked about, say that's in, give you some reference there. That's the LA airport area that, the 66, almost 66.5 occupancy. So not historically known for a lot of the luxuries. I will tell you Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and Santa Monica, Marina del Rey, more of the luxury heavy areas, which we'll touch on more. But Los Angeles CBD was the only class below 60% among all the submarkets, rather. And that's really no surprise. We're still seeing those CBDs lagging a little bit on a performance side of things, just with groups being a little slow to come back, even though I just said this was the best month since February 2020. So we looked at the occupancy. And so if you start to drill down a little bit further, right? So what's the makeup of each submarket? And is there a pattern there as to what is driving those performance levels. Last year, I could tell you that if there was an area that had a large number of economy properties, that they were really going to lead among all submarkets, because that was what was really driving any performance. I can tell you that Los Angeles North and South Bay had the highest occupancies out of all submarkets. And if you see here, they really have the best makeup of that upper mid-scale, and economy properties. So just looking for any sort of telltale signs or sort of stories within. To take that a little bit further, and we'll move to the next screen, you can see, and we can bounce back. But as we look at ADR, obviously Santa Monica, Marina Del Rey, and Beverly Hills, Hollywood Beverly Hills submarkets are very heavily on, as you see, the dark orange, which is luxury. And obviously you can see that with the heavy number of luxury, obviously that drives the higher ADRs among all submarkets. So the ADR is not as big of a story as the occupancy, is to say, like, what submarkets are driving that occupancy number that we saw from the LA market, which was 65%. And if we break that down, we could really see that on the next screen, on the previous screen. Some strong rates coming out again. LA some markets are always really strong from a rate standpoint, as you all know. Talked about driving rates, push rates, luxury obviously dominating. The luxury dominant submarkets are ahead of the 2019 levels in ADRs. You can see again Santa Monica, Marina Del Rey submarket, and Hollywood Beverly Hills. As we move to again, this is breaking out left to right all the submarkets. So we saw occupancies. We saw what makes up the supply or the room counts, and then we look at obviously the ADR, and then now RevPAR. And again, the strong rates in luxury-driven submarkets provide the big jump in RevPAR. So again, looking at Santa Monica, Marina Del Rey, and Hollywood Beverly Hills there with the largest jumps due to that very, very high aggressive ADR in those submarkets. So that's for the overview of the performance. We'll spend, yes.
Chase, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is Libby. If you could go back to that last slide, we had a participant ask for a little bit better definition of what is Los Angeles North, for example, or LA Southeast, LA East. Do you have that readily available of what you're referring to?
Yeah, so what I can do is, Libby, I think what might be easier is just to provide instead of listing off all, I can provide an actual market maps to show. So what we do is we take an LA market is so big, and it's made up of so many submarkets that it would be much easier, I think, to provide sort of a smaller set, so then we can forward on.
Yeah, that would be great. That would kind of serve as our glossary.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I can provide, and to be fair, I mean, obviously Hollywood Beverly Hills is a little bit easier, Los Angeles CBD, I mean, they're still a little bit easier to determine. When you get into the larger ones, a little bit more difficult. And that's also too, why I'd love for you to see that, because that's where we really want to drive participation, because then we can start getting even more granular there, because I think a lot of times these submarkets are a bit broad because we need more participation in some of those different areas. So great question. I will, when it's a little bit more of a specific area, a lot of times we'll add in those market maps to show, being that this was such a big area with LA market, and then the submarkets even being large as well. That's a really great question, and we can provide that information.
Okay, if we can add that to the deck before we send it out to our participants today,
sure, 100%.
They're going to love that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Easy ask. So just looking at the pipeline, again, this is total US. Again, looking at 2021 and 2020, you can see the in-construction rooms really at this point down 20% year over year. But that's not something that we did not anticipate. Obviously, there's certain areas that are still in construction, but the final planning, or the planning, has really jumped. This is where you start to see things are getting back into the pipeline. So in the pipeline that we track, we're looking at what's in planning, what's in final planning, and then in construction. And once in construction moves to open and operating, it goes to that supply, that census database. So We spent 2019 looking at, really the opposite of these numbers from the percent change standpoint. And now, you're starting to see a good sign of properties are starting to get back into that planning phase, where there were several projects that, as you would understand, that were deferred or even abandoned at some point. But just looking at the long-term view from 2006, if you will, to 2021, 2020 was really the peak with 220,000 rooms under construction in 2020. And the number went down and went up and went down. You can see it's been somewhat volatile, but never reached that 2020 and levels in April. And in September, we're tracking about 172,000 rooms that are still in construction. So still a very, very strong number, but certainly not where the peak was. And then again, what makes up that? If you look at, sort of again, going back to that class view, out of those rooms that are in construction, 54% are that upscale and upper mid-scale. And no surprise that especially the upper mid-scale classes really perform quite well. And a lot of this has to do with we'll look at this here in a minute, but a lot of these are branded properties. So it kind of falls into that upscale, upper mid-scale class. I went ahead and added sort of the top 25 markets in construction, just because LA market is in the top 25, and you can then look at this at your own time, but just to see how you all compare against the other 24 of the top 25 markets in the US. And there's some familiar faces here with San Francisco, Orange County, and a few California markets. So again, the top 25 markets account for 46% of all the in-construction rooms. So that 172,000 rooms, 54% of that, or 46% of that rather, is the top 25. So you can see a big portion of those in-construction rooms are falling into that top 25 markets in the total US. And then here, this is kind of flopped from years past, where 76% of all the properties that are in construction, or all the rooms that are in construction rather, are from that big six, the IHG, Choice, Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, and Wyndham. And if you look at that compared to 2010, you can see here that some of those numbers have changed quite a bit from where it was even 10 years ago. This is just showing you in 2020 where it was. Obviously, it's changed just a little bit in 2021, but quite a big shift from the independent side and then the branded side of in-room projects. Looking at from sort of the far left to far right, again, you can see the in construction. Once it's there, this is sort of looking at an attrition. There's a chance that it could, all those rooms that we just looked at, there's a chance that, that plus 41 year-over-year percent change in planning, well, 36% of those could be abandoned, right? But the ones that are in construction, which again, 172,000 rooms, there is a 96% chance that will come to fruition, doors will open, and we will be serving guests. I'm going to just skip over and look at the forecast. Again, the demand beat the forecast. Obviously, very, very, very important, and something that we love to see from an ADR perspective and from a demand perspective. So this is the Q2 2021 forecast. Again, you look at demand, looking at the actual as we forecast versus actual there. So not bad to be ahead of where we thought we would be. This is a lot of data on the next few slides, and then we'll get to LA. But looking at the key performance indicators, looking at what was 2020 actual, 2021, and 2022, obviously seeing a lot more positive growth from 2021 and 2022, which is obviously something we could see. I think to point out, RevPAR, was had a decline of 50% year-over-year change in RevPAR, but you see 2021, it's almost got it all back. So it's going to take some time. We'll look at some graphs here coming up of kind of where we would be back sort of pre-pandemic, but again, some strong numbers as we talked about today from a performance standpoint. And then just looking at what we looked at before was a percentage change. This is more looking at sort of the actual numbers, so the realized occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR. And then here at the bottom, again, when you have time to look at this, it's showing you, where this was comparable So RevPAR, for instance, was $42, almost $43. That was comparable to 1995. So that really shows you kind of where things were. And then here 2021 to 2012, and then 2022 to 2014. I am going to skip over this because this is just going to break down luxury to independent. Again, I think it's important to see, but you can spend some time. This is looking at 2021. This is looking at 2022. As we talked about before, kind of indexed against 2019, which was again one of the best years ever, if not the best. You can see that we're saying that if you just look at RevPAR here in the purple, that in 2024, that's when we would exceed that when indexed against 2019, we would exceed where RevPAR was in 2019. There's a lot of variables that go into this that could accelerate that. We hope that is the case. We've definitely seen some positive movements. And so, maybe that moves to 2023, 2022. I think the most positive news is the borders reopening. That has a lot to do with it, as you all know. That was one of the indicators that we were hoping to see. So with the vaccines, places starting to, continue to be open and stay open. And then obviously, with the borders opening very, very soon. If you look at the top 25 markets versus the rest of the US, again, you can see here from an occupancy, ADR, RevPAR percent change that, just again, left to right, just looking at the forecast percentage change. The top 25 we kind of categorize by ourselves, kind of off to their side. And then on the right, just the rest of the US, just to see how they compare as you look at percentage change standpoints from the three major KPIs that we track. Now, lastly, the Los Angeles market. Looking at the actual realized numbers, 2021, the percentage change in the middle, obviously 2022, and then percentage change on the far right. So occupancy, like we said, kind of right in line. It's a little bit below what it was in September, but still not far off from where things might end for the total 2021, and then 2022 at 67.5%. ADR again, and those are moderate jumps, and then to see really even in 22 the double-digit percentage changes in occupancy, really almost ADR, and then in RevPAR at almost 21%. Year-over-year change is very, very strong. You can see that jump from 89 to 108. So, Libby, Mitch, thank you so very much. I know we could spend another hour or two going through different things, talking about all that's going on in the industry and what was, but that's what I have for you today. Again, I will add those market maps so that it makes it adds a little bit more clarity as to what makes up those submarkets. So thank you for that.
Chase, I've never seen anybody get through those slides in such efficient manner as you did. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
So
we had a rough start.
I took a couple pictures with my phone because I can't wait for the deck. But that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone. Chase and I met through LinkedIn. So please find him on LinkedIn. He is very accessible. He's a wealth of knowledge, or at least I feel you're a great director of traffic to tell us where to go to get the information. So you're an extraordinary partner with us, and I thank you most sincerely. So thank you for joining us today. Now I'd like to just take 1 minute and 1 minute only to turn this back over to Mitch, who's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on next week. Is that right, Mitch?
That is right. That is right. Chase, if you could stop sharing your screen here for a second.
Thank you.
And then I'll share mine. Oh my goodness, you guys absolutely, positively have to come to this event. It's our first in-person event. Yay, finally. This event, it's taken quite a while to put this together. We had to delay the actual date one time because there was a lot of moving parts in this event. It's going to be the most fun, crazy thing you've ever seen. I showed it to a couple of people and their first reaction like, oh my God, this looks like so much fun. That's the whole idea. We were actually, Jody Flowers and I were doing a site inspection at the Sheraton Los Angeles San Gabriel yesterday. And we were talking to Raquel Lucas, who's a catering sales manager there. And we told her about this drag queen Tupperware and bingo night. And she goes, oh, wow, I went to a party that had something like that. And we were like, oh, really, who? And we said, Lady Quesadilla. And she says, oh my God, is he Hispanic? Yes. Oh my God. She pulls up her phone and shows us Lady Quesadilla on her phone. She went to a party. She said, he's a hoot. Lots of fun. Very funny. So this event is drag queen, Tupperware, and bingo night. And it's going to be a week from tomorrow, Thursday night, November 4th, from 6 to 8 o'clock at Los Angeles Athletic Club. It's going to be a super fun event. We're going to start off. We have Trey Past hors d'oeuvres, cheese and crudité display. First drinks on us. You'll get a ticket for that. And then, of course, we'll have an open bar afterwards because hospitality people don't like to drink, from what I've been told.
Mhm.
Each person also gets three games of bingo. So we have 3 games, and each person will get 3 bingo cards. So some people are overachievers, they like to have 6 cards per game. So we'll have lots of extra bingo cards that you can purchase. And again, the proceeds of that, we're going to do a 50-50 cash on that. And 50% of that money is going to benefit the HSMEI Student Scholarship Fund. The other 50% will be used to give away as a cash prize. We're going to start it off with $100 cash for each game right off the bat. So if we don't sell any more bingo cards, we got a $100 cash prize for the winner. Okay. We also have lots of raffle prizes. We have gift baskets. We have gift cards. We've got wine. And then there's lots of networking and lots of other fun, cool stuff. But you got to come to this event. It is going to be crazy. And Terry Honorato, our DOSM at the LA Athletic Club, is rolling out the red carpet for us. It's going to be in their big ballroom and the foyer, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you haven't already done so, you should definitely plan to attend this event. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share in the chat box. Let me make sure I've got everybody on here. I'm going to share that with you. If you guys want to click on that real quick, that way you can go right to the event page, click on the RSVP now, and you'll have to go over to Eventbrite and you can get a ticket or tickets. Invite people from outside the industry too. This is a super fun time for us to get back together, get reacquainted, network, and have a blast. Okay.
I'm coming. I'm going to find a few friends to come with me because I think I just need to laugh a little bit. Everything has been so critical these last 18 to 24 months that to have an in-person event that encourages engagement and a little bit of laughter, I don't think can be bad for anybody.
It's going to be a great time. So with that said, I think we're ready to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for attending today. Thank you, Chase. Thank you all of the HSMEI LA chapter board members for attending. And we will see you next week at Drag Queen, Tupperware, and Bingo. Oh, and by the way, you can buy Tupperware at that event. There's a link on the event page if you visit that. And you can actually go look at the Tupperware that she's got on sale for us for our event. Okay?
Thanks
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.